this visionary
No.
and this impactful individual who we felt it was no mistake to select him to serve our guest speaker. I will ask that we all please stand in the moment of silence as we recognize those of our community.
If you want to take picture, you can take picture here simultaneously.
Who depart to us during the time of COVID. Thank you, Lord. You can have a seat. We are talking about Liberia. And when we speak of Liberia, we speak of Liberians. I was having a conversation with somebody and I told them we at Liberia, we serve as ambassador for Liberia. It don't have to be political ambassador, but because we call ourselves Liberian, we serve as ambassadors. So if something happened to say it was the Liberian people. So our guest speaker is a Liberian. Our guest speaker is a medical doctor, a biomedical research scientist, a social activist, and an inventor who specializes in infectious disease research. Our guest speaker today studies chemistry and zoology at the College of Science and Technology at the University of Liberia. Our guest speakers also holds a degree in human medicine, to be precise, infectious disease, from Humboldt University, Berlin, Germany. Our guest speaker never just was certified. And that's why all of Liberians, we need not to be certified. We need not to be complacent, because complacency is never going to help our country. Our guest speaker went on to earn a postdoc degree fellowship as a biomedical scientist at the National Institute of Health, the NIH, University of Pennsylvania. Our guest speaker is an activist for democracy and social justice. Our guest speaker was imprisoned by the Liberian military government of General Samuel Keynote, and afterward, in 1988, he went into exile. Our guest speaker, due to his huge desire to make that impact, in 2014, he was head of the Diaspora Liberian Emergency Response Task Force on Ebola. If everyone can recall, we saw Liberia was one of the highest hit country when it comes to Ebola. So our guest speaker was leading that Liberian response, talking to Liberian professionals in the diaspora organization in helping fight the outbreak of Ebola in Liberia and surrounding countries. In 2014 as well, our guest speakers was a scientist at the Laboratory of Emerging Pentagon of Division of Emerging and Transfusion Transmitted Disease at the U.S. Food and Drugs Administration, the FDA. In September 2014, our guest speakers gave Congress a testimony on Ebola outbreak after testifying before the U.S. House of Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, Global Human Rights, and International Organization. His fellowship was terminated. If you mention our guest speaker, what he told or raised with the FDA for disapproval. When the FDA removed his name from for the scientific research paper and development of medical tests. He filed a complaint against the FDA. So our guest speakers were not also just against the Liberian government, but he is a social justice everywhere he sees this injustice, and he was not with fear to challenge the federal judge administration. So after 2 years, our guest speaker returned the patent document. The FDA returned the patent document to our guest speaker. So when it comes to patent, for who don't understand, if you decide to invent a specific thing, you have to send that invention to the FDA for research and further investigation for you to understand it is actually your handwork and you're not trying to duplicate somebody's research. So our guest speaker invented a rapid diagnosis test that detects Ebola, HIV, Zika, paramecium, malaria, yellow fever virus, dengue virus, hepatitis B, C, and E, West Nile virus, and the test detected 3 of the 7 infections simultaneously in 10 to 14 minutes. I want y'all here for that. On Liberia. I'm not saying Nigeria. I'm not saying Australia. I'm saying on Nigeria invented infectious disease test. I can give you result in 10 to 14 minutes. So when we go around and try to castigate Liberia, we should understand that people are there serving and we are true ambassadors for Liberia on the international stage. In 2016, our guest speaker received a Human Order of African Redemption from Liberia President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. In July of 2017, our guest speaker received an Innovation Prize for the African Social Impact. Our guest speaker has 4 children. Ladies and gentlemen, not much ado, I want to welcome Dr. Dougbeh Nyan. Let's give a hand to some applause as our guest speaker comes on stage.
Thank you very much, compatriot Abednego, for that wonderful introduction. I am very glad to be here this evening to celebrate with you, my fellow Liberians and other nationals that may be present in this hall. What I would have done before commencing my speech is what you've already done by asking everyone to observe a moment of silence from by those who lost their lives during the Ebola crisis, during the senseless war that we fought for 14 years, and during this period of COVID. So that has been done, I appreciate it. I would like to thank the organizers of this important event, the Liberian Unity Festival, for the invitation to serve as guest speaker or keynote speaker of this important occasion. Greetings to all of you residents of the beautiful state of New York, Staten Island and its surroundings, and to those who travel from far and wide to grace this event. It is customary for people of the diaspora originating from the same nation, region, or continent to gather occasionally during important holidays and national events. This brings together families and friends in a spirit of oneness, love, and a show of patriotism and positive nationalism. This event is no different, but follows in the same path. The president and organizers of the Liberian Unity Festival, leadership of all of the participating organizations here present, officials and community leaders of Staten Island and other New York cities, officials of Liberian communities in the US present here, New York State officials who may be present here, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to speak to you on the topic, the need for unity in Liberia and the rebirth of our African cultural heritage and the responsibilities that come with that. Liberia, our beloved country on the west coast of Africa, was established by the American Colonization Society for the singular purpose of resettling free slaves from the United States. In this process of resettlement, free slaves from the Caribbean also migrated or were resettled in Liberia. It is further interesting to note that slave ships that were carrying cargo of captured Africans from along the Congo Basin were intercepted by British naval ships. And the human cargo of these slave ships were freed and resettled in Liberia as well. All the while, there were people already in this region before the repatriation and resettlements that were taking place. This group of somewhat diverse people of different ethnic backgrounds, generally called the natives, span from the north in Lofa, Nimba, Bank, and from the west on the coast from Cape Mount to Cape Palmas. In a true historical consideration, the natives were also migrants who occupied these land spaces long before the transatlantic slave trade. According to numerous historians, or according to oral history, this group of ethnically diverse people migrated southwards towards the land and the sea after the breakdown of several powerful African empires in the north of the African continent, from the Sudan, Ghana, and Mali empires, just to name a few. The initial breakdown of these empires was occasioned by Arab invasion of the Black continent from the north and their subsequent conquest of land. And there, they took people and traded them, meaning Africans, traded Africans into the Arabian world. That was far before the transatlantic slave trade, for which there was a slave trade that the Arabs conducted in Africa even before the Europeans started their slave trade in Africa. One would think that with this beautiful mixture of people, the settlers, the resettlers, the migrants, the aborigines or the natives, etc., of African people and people of African descent, we will have experienced the first Liberian Unity Festival as we are organizing today.
Amen. Clap your hand, please.
Experiencing it with joy and peace. But what we witnessed throughout the course of our history as a nation since the 1800s has been a mixture of good and bad in Liberia. I say good and bad because nothing or not everything was good and not everything was bad either. Why did it turn out to be a recipe for chaos in the latter years? Our existence has been characterized by lots of progress, though, but this progress has been undermined by long-standing division, disunity, suppression of one group by the other, the enslavement of native by former slaves in the Spanish island of Fernando, and ethno-political rule. We as Liberians, today as we are called, from the efforts of the settlers and the Americans established the free black republic on the African continent when all of Africa was colonized. And when there was apartheid in the southern part of Africa, we followed the gallant step and example of our black brothers and sisters in Haiti, who defeated the French colonizers and established the first ever black republic in the world in 1804. Let us ask ourselves some hard questions. First of all, why are we gathering here tonight? What has been the source of our problems? Has one group of people thought of themselves as better than the other group in Liberia? Has one group of people thought themselves as being more powerful than another group of people in Liberia? And this goes for Africa also by extension. Why were native chiefs killed by the settler government in the 1800s? Why were David Coleman and his son killed? Why was President Edwin J. Roy overthrown by the Liberian oligarchy and met his untimely death when he was escaping for safety? Why was the Rebel Revolt of 1876 and the one around 1910 so brutally crushed by the settler government and assistance from the United States? In the Crew Wars, the Crew people, around 1915 through 1935, why were the Crew so brutally crushed as well and hundreds of local chiefs executed when there was already a truce? Why? And I pose this question again. Why was the enslavement of natives, meaning the Crews and Rebel, necessary by former slaves on the Spanish island of Fernando? In 1980, why were 13 of our compatriots executed by firing squad after the bloody overthrow of the Tolos government? Why? Why were they executed? Again, why were over 250,000 of our brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, in general compatriots, killed during the 14-year uncivil war? You were just asking some of our guests here today about their experience in the Civil War. And we heard their testimony. The brother out there talked about power of dead bodies. He didn't even know whether they were dead or alive, but his first time
Imagine how traumatic that is for him and the rest of those who saw that. Why were people killed? Why? Why are one group of people enjoying the country's wealth while the rest of the people continue to live in abject poverty? Somewhere, there could be a deep-seated hurt and agony in our society and a search for healing. There are too many contradictions that have unfolded in our nation's history, and I can go on and on and on. But these few questions, and there are many more, could hopefully set the basis for a national discussion on why we have been so apart and crying out for unity all the time. Why have we been so apart? And at every step of our nation's history, we cry for unity. These questions require a serious national dialogue. A dialogue that will be based on openness, sincerity, and the search for social justice and genuine peace if we are to confront our past, address the present social political issues that are at hand presently, and then begin to chart a good and better course for a decent future for Liberia, for our children, for the next generation. And of course, for Africa by extension. This Unity Festival that has been organized by you all, for example, can be seen as making a contribution to the discussion by waking up our consciences and our consciousness of all Liberian people, and by extension, all people of African descent and Africa in general, while we are at the same time showcasing our culture to the world. But allow me to say this: we can talk all about unity, or we cannot talk all about unity when the people are angry and when the people are hungry. When government sees critical voices as enemies of the state, we cannot talk about unity. We cannot help political parties to become institutional and unite when we are disunited. When some say, quote unquote, Mandingo men should go back to Guinea, in this case, we cannot talk about unity either if we ignore the history of the migration of West Africans, as I have just stated to you. We cannot say that. We gather here in this nice, beautiful hall because we seem to recognize, all of us here, thank you for coming. It shows that we seem to recognize something, that there is something called unity, spelled out in capital letters, U-N-I-T-Y. Or there is either its absence or it is threatened in our society. Such absence or threat to unity then stands to undermine our cultural heritage. We must take keen note that our culture is not just what we wear or what language we speak. In our culture entails a whole lot. It is largely, or it has largely to do with the way of life of a people. In the modern contemporary sense today, we see that our heritage is seriously threatened. Our cultural heritage is seriously threatened. There is a culture of impunity for stealing government money. Is that the kind of culture we want? For killing over 250,000 of our compatriots, there is impunity up to this date. We continue to call for economic and war crimes court to look into the killings that went on in our country during the uncivil 14 years war. Only the Swedish, the Americans, the British are holding people accountable on our behalf. But we ourselves have not been able to muster the courage to hold those accountable who carried out and perpetrated the violence and the senseless killings in our country. We must think about that. We cannot talk about unity when all of that is happening around us. We cannot talk about unity when people continue to destroy our country, destroy our economy, as we see today. There is a culture of injustice in our society, and people seem to be playing blind eye to that. There is a culture of rape of our girls, of our ladies, our beautiful African ladies, our beautiful Liberian ladies and girls, and even babies. And it's been ignored. That's not the kind of culture we want. Or is that the kind of culture we want? There's a culture of sodomy of our young boys. Because of the infiltration of Western decadent cultural behavior in our societies in Africa. Is that the kind of cultural heritage we want? Don't we know our traditional African values? Don't we understand our traditional African way of life, of marriage, and of family? There is a culture of bad governance, and our traditional family values and institutions have been threatened. And there is also this culture of mediocrity and sycophancy, where people form cheerleaders to just cheer them up, even if they are doing bad in government. They have misused those slogans of battle cry that we as social democrats and progressives evolved. When we say Zekwe, Zekwe, Nyoma, Zekwe, it meant something. When we say Awon, it meant something. When we say Baku, it meant something. And you can say that in every Liberian and African language. Those slogans that we used to struggle for democracy yesterday are being insulted. Those are part of our culture. They have been misused. That's part of our cultural heritage. And in that stage, they are dividing us. So the divide and rule continues. Traditionally, we as Africans have never liked anything called sodomy. You will be punished, and we don't know that. It's foreign to us. Our people, my people, we just can't talk all in my Liberian palace. We just can't talk all. There's so much in the hearts of each and every one of us. Traditionally, we as Africans are respectful. Our people were bold, straightforward, lived in communal life, respected the values of our tradition, and they meted out punishments for those who violated the rules, laws, standards, and ethics of our African culture. That heritage. The Liberian Festival, or the Liberian Unity Festival that you have organized, is a platform that is serving a purpose for addressing these issues that I have just outlined. So I would like for you to give yourself a really big hand. And it is meant to showcase our culture. We're not saying that all cultures are 100% good, but we have good culture. But the world will not respect you. When I say you, all of us. If all that is happening back home, remember we are here in the diaspora, showcasing our culture, the Liberian African culture. But the world to which we are showcasing our culture will not respect us if what is happening back home, or what has been happening back home since the last 16 years after the war ended. Now that we are developing these kind of platforms, we must continue with these kind of events and fora like this. We must put aside our differences. I heard someone who was being interviewed at the end saying that we must put aside our differences and work together and be united. Bring to justice those who have perpetrated economic and war crimes that have affected our unity and have affected our cultural heritage. Leadership is very important in harnessing the elements of unity and culture. And that is why we must place into power during the coming elections visionary, straightforward, bold leaders who are patriotic, who have a love for country, who want to build our country. Those kind of leaders are the leaders we need. We cannot re-elect leaders who have hurt our country, whether in the executive branch or in the legislative branch. We must unite. This festival calls for unity and the promotion of our cultural heritage. We are one people, my people. Liberia is just so small. Africa is a vast continent. Yet Africans interact with each other, which makes Africa small. My people, let us unite. Let us promote our culture. But if we are to promote our culture, let us take care of those things that are hurting our culture. I thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man.
All right. All right, DJ. Thank you. Let's clap. That was amazing. Thank you so very much. Doctor, thank you so very much for this amazing speech.